So in breaking news this morning, Scott Bessent just delivered a major update to the trade negotiations with China. After being threatened with arrest by DHS, Democrats are speaking out, and Sean Duffy had to shut down the media once again after they continued to lie about the FAA.
And I think that led to a great deal of the productivity we've seen. We will be giving details tomorrow, but I can tell you that the talks were productive. We had the Vice Premier, two vice ministers who were integrally involved, Ambassador Jameson and myself. And I spoke to President Trump, as did Ambassador Jameson last night, and he is fully informed of what is going on. So there will be a complete briefing tomorrow morning.
Okay, so before we move forward, I just want to say up front, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who watch our channel. I believe being a mother is probably the hardest job in the world. Shout out to my adopted mother who's no longer here with me. I think the biggest lesson I learned from her was common sense. And lastly, my beautiful wife, happy Mother's Day to you as well. All right, so that's Scott Bessent, fresh out of the meeting with the representatives from China. Now understand something, guys. This was positive. There's two main reasons. One, yesterday, mainstream media tried to get people to believe that the trade representatives from China abruptly ended the meeting and ghosted Scott Bessent. Well, that story ended up being debunked. So that's the first reason why this was a success. Two, it's kind of implied this went on for 2 days. And what he had to say in the end was that progress was made. So that's a good first step. Now, mainstream media will downplay this, but I just wanted to give you guys the bottom line up front. Now, here is Mr. Greer, who also was there with Scott Bessent, and what he had to say. Take a listen.
I want to echo the Secretary's remarks with respect to the Swiss government. They've been so welcoming, and they've hosted this, and everything has gone off flawlessly, and we appreciate that. And again, to the Chinese negotiators, Vice Premier Liu He, Vice Minister Li Qiangong, and Vice Minister Liao Min worked very diligently, and these are very tough negotiators. A couple of them I know from before and have had past interactions with them. And this was, as the Secretary pointed out, a very constructive 2 days. It's important to understand how quickly we were able to come to agreement, which reflects that perhaps the differences were not so large as maybe thought. That being said, there was a lot of groundwork that went into these 2 days. Just remember why we're here in the first place. The United States has a massive $1.2 trillion trade deficit. So the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs. And we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency.
So that is the big update from the trade talks with China. Again, positive result. And I really do hope that the Trump administration continues to stay firm in regards to China, and that you yourself reject what mainstream media wants you to believe, which is that China is the victim here. In a lot of cases, they talk that way and they want you to be sympathetic. In fact, in some cases, they're rooting against the president, which is ridiculous. But tomorrow they will have that briefing where I'm assuming they're going to disclose additional details about what happened and what the future looks like moving forward. Now, let's go to our next story, which is a continuation from this mess that went down at the New Jersey Detention Center, where DHS came out and said that they're actually looking to arrest 3 Democrats who were there. And of course, those Democrats made an appearance on CNN this morning and had this to say. Take a listen.
Have you heard from anyone at DHS that you might be charged or arrested?
We've not heard anything. We've only read what everyone else has read. We have no idea why they would even suggest that, because we didn't do anything. So nope, we have no idea what they have in mind other than to create an environment of intimidation just by claiming that perhaps we might be subject to arrest. But there's no reason for it. Nothing happened other than the chaos that they created themselves. If anything, we were pushed and shoved and found in a very vulnerable situation for the 3 of us.
Vulnerable situation is the words that she's deciding to use. But the reality is this: Democrats are playing victim once again. Okay, she claims that they didn't do any pushing or shoving, but according to the video, they were doing the pushing and shoving in regards to the ICE officers. Okay. Now, will this result in someone actually getting arrested and prosecuted and sent to prison? Absolutely not. This is a freaking distraction and a sideshow at best. And if I was in the Trump administration, I'd be looking to nip this in the butt and move on. Let's modify our security procedures to prevent this from happening again, because to me, Democrats want to use this. It's almost as if they want to get arrested so they can use it a part of their narrative to not only amp up their base, but make the claim that Trump is not only arresting judges, but he's arresting people in Congress. I'm telling you, that's where they want to take this.
So they were allowed in, they got a tour, and then somebody made a decision on the way out. Someone in Homeland made a decision on the way out to do this. First of all, one of these members is 80 years old. So this language, this January 6th language that was specifically used by Homeland, they stormed the facility. That's a lie. They were invited in to tour the facility. And then on the way out, something happened where they decided to go and arrest the mayor of Newark. By the way, they did this with people who were not badged, who covered their face as if they were on some sort of ICE raid with criminals. Not the mayor and not 3 congressmen. So I got to be honest, I think someone at Homeland decided to set them up as they were exiting the facility. With the deep state, remember, that still exists, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so he's just being disingenuous, as we know. I do agree with him. Someone who's 80 years old, I don't believe is actually body slamming anybody. So once again, I will say this to call balls and strikes. DHS official yesterday came out and said there's body cam footage showing one of them body slamming an ICE officer. That is a heavy claim. And they better show the footage of that. And this takes us to our next story, where Sean Duffy is continuing to have to defend himself against the mainstream media after he announced he would replace all the air traffic control systems. Now, this comes as Newark, New Jersey's airport continues to fail once again just this morning. So before we hear from him, listen to this story.
We're following breaking news at this hour. The FAA issuing a 45-minute ground stop at Newark International Airport this morning after an equipment outage at its air traffic control facility. It's unclear what caused this stop and exactly how many flights were impacted. Our teams are currently looking into the specifics, but this comes amid the growing travel nightmare at that vital airport following 3 radar outages over the last 2 weeks. Take a look at these numbers that our team gathered. They did the math and they found that since Friday morning alone, 300 flights have been canceled at Newark and another 654 flights have been delayed. All of it following a series of scares at that transportation hub. Early Friday morning, radar screens went black for about 90 seconds, leaving air traffic controllers in the dark about planes that were in the air. Something similar happened on 2 occasions in late April. Since then, several controllers have taken medical leave, calling the experience a traumatic event. This, of course, further complicates, existing staffing shortages at that airport.
Now, before we get to what Sean Duffy had to say, clearly this is another warning for people flying in and out of that airport. And that's why I'm going to warn you at this point, along with our sponsor, about your retirement. It's no secret that President Trump has declared a trade war with China. He's standing up to them finally. But this is not stopping billionaires like Warren Buffett from dumping $133 billion worth of stocks. That's why thousands of IRA and 401k savers are shielding their savings with gold. And I trust the experts at Colonial Metals Group to help you do the same. So head over to freegoldguide.com/Devori or call 1-888-757-5158 to receive a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your savings with gold tax-free. You could also qualify for a free home safe and $7,500 of free silver. Again, you can head to freegoldguide.com/Devori or call 1-888-757-5158 or click the link in the description below.
Is old, right? This is a system that's 25 at best, sometimes 50 years old. The Congress and the country haven't paid attention to it, right? They expect it to work. And so now I think the lights are blinking, the sirens are turning, and they're saying, listen, we have to fix this, because what you see in Newark is going to happen in other places across the country. It has to be fixed. And so what we're having is some telecom issues, but we're also having some glitches in our software. As the information comes in, it's overloading some of our lines and the system goes down. So I'll just tell you specifically in Newark, we believe we're going to have it up and running in short order. We're going to be able to fix that glitch. And we feel a little more comfortable about our primary line that gets the data in on radar. And our redundant line is up and working as well.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing about this story is the history of our accomplishments as a country, especially from the perspective of technology. You mean to tell me that in 2025, we're having these issues at our airports. And the reason why, and some of you guys push back, no, Devori, air traffic control should not be privatized. Well, you tell me if you're going to continue to trust the federal government to get this right. Let's be honest here, because they couldn't get COVID right. They can't get the education system right. They can't get tax regulation right. So what makes you think they're going to get this right? And at the end of the day, I don't care how this gets done. But one thing is for sure, Congress needs to step up and fund whatever needs to be funded to fix this issue. People should feel safe and confident when flying in America. Now, he also had to respond to claims that FAA were cutting essential safety personnel.
In the safety mission of the FAA, like air traffic controllers, no one was cut. We actually have staffed up. We've hired more air traffic controllers during this time. There were probationary workers that were let go. Those are employees who were there less than a year, and again, we excluded the safety positions. Most of them have come back. So again, to say the FAA has 46,000 employees. And if you lost 350, is this affecting our safety mission? There's a lot of things the FAA does, but for us, safety is key. So no, we've retained all those safety positions.
Yeah, and here's the other thing politically. Democrats and definitely mainstream media will blame Sean Duffy and President Trump for all these issues. It doesn't matter that these issues have been happening for quite some time, even before they assumed office. They will say that it's their fault. And what's interesting is when you have people who are the CEO of one of the airlines coming out and defending Sean Duffy, I think mainstream media has a problem, right? Take a listen to this.
I think this is the most optimistic I've been in my entire career about finally getting the FAA fixed. I mean, I and others in the aviation industry have been working on this for decades, and I think we've turned the corner, and we have the commitment. It's bipartisan, it's bicameral, it's in Senate, House, administration, Secretary Duffy, across the board, a commitment to getting this fixed. We know how to do it. We just need the will to actually follow through and get it done.
What makes you more optimistic that it's going to get done now? This has been something they've been talking about since the Bush administration at the beginning of the century.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to get it done.
Yeah.
And every few years, someone comes up with a plan, and you guys and everyone in Congress go, oh, it's great, it's bipartisan, it's got everything we need, and it goes nowhere. So why on earth is it more likely to happen this time?
There's two things that make it different today than in the past. One, they've asked for all of the funding up front. In the past, it's always been a year at a time. And when you do things a year at a time, especially in government, like it just stops and starts and stops and starts. You can't do these big projects. Like no company would try to do big projects a year at a time. And so this time they're going to ask for all the money up front, which lets you plan the entire project and get the entire project done. And the second thing is people. We have a secretary who's action-oriented, who's committed to getting this done.
Well, I think that is a legitimate question to ask. What makes today so different? And he's right. It is the people. President Trump is truly committed to fixing this. So is the secretary. Unlike under the Biden administration, they didn't really do any of this. They didn't even attempt to ask Congress for the money up front because it wasn't really a priority. That's the honest truth. And I am hopeful that it will happen, but I'm not naive to the fact that obviously it's Congress that we are talking about. And hopefully the Trump administration holds their feet to the fire on this. And what's interesting is the CEO also defends Sean Duffy in regards to the DOGE cuts, because again, the media claims the FAA was cutting essential personnel.
I think Secretary Duffy probably is the leading gold star for how to manage through the DOGE process, which is they called it caution tape around all the safety, controller, all the critical functions. And DOGE went and looked, and I think they took 400 jobs out of over 100,000 jobs, back office kinds of jobs. I think they've done a very effective job of protecting that core safety operational workforce. One of the big challenges is the controller workforce is about 30% short, and getting back to full staffing in the controller workforce is something that Secretary Duffy and the entire FAA are committed to doing.
So there's another lie from mainstream media debunked. This is why you have to make sure you're paying attention to what both sides are saying, because they'd have you believe that it's air traffic controllers who were cut by the DOGE cuts, which is so far from the truth. Remember, he used the number 400 out of 100,000 people. That's interesting. Now let's go to our next story. So Howard Lutnick made an appearance on CNN, and he also had to defend President Trump's tariffs because Dana Bash, you know her, she's anti-Trump as well. Here's what he said.
You mentioned the UK agreement. You were the lead negotiator there, aside from the president, of course. And it does, you mentioned some of the aspects of it, but one other aspect is that it keeps in place a 10% across-the-board tariff on goods imported to the U.S. from the UK. As you know, the cost of tariffs are paid by American consumers. We've been talking about this. So should Americans be prepared? I
disagree with that, you know.
Well, okay, but most economists, I would say, disagree with you on that, and we have seen it being passed off time and time again to the American consumer. But regardless of that, just on the policy, this is what I want to ask you about. Is the 10% tariff that we're seeing in the framework for the UK going to be in place for the foreseeable future?
So we do expect a 10% baseline tariff to be in place for the foreseeable future. But don't buy the silly arguments that the U.S. consumer pays. Businesses, their job is to try to sell to the American consumer. And domestically produced products are not going to have that tariff. So the foreigners are going to finally have to compete. They're going to have to compete. What happens is the businesses and the countries primarily eat the tariff.
Okay, so let me try to explain this in a very simple manner. The position of the Trump administration is this. If an American company starts selling American products, there are 0 tariffs on the American consumer. You got it? However, if there is a company from the UK, as an example, who wants to sell in America's market, they have to pay a 10% tariff. And they're betting on the fact that it will be the UK company who will eat the cost of that. Because we have to remember, the UK company is still going to have to compete with the American-made company. So why would the UK company raise their prices? I don't see how that would make sense. As an entrepreneur, I don't see how that makes sense. I see what the Trump administration is doing. They want the American-made company to be able to compete. I don't understand why there is such a confusion here.
Look, we have 25% tariffs that were set under President Trump's first term. I don't hear a single word, not a single word about those tariffs. No consumers in America, those were set in 2017 and 2018. No consumers in America sit here complaining about those tariffs.
Well, prices
what happens is
prices have gone up for lots of reasons.
Currencies. Oh, no. Don't talk about the Biden inflation. That's another whole gig. When President Trump in 2019 had the lowest inflation in history. So you know that this works really, really well. It works well. These countries and the businesses have to compete. Yep. They have to cut prices. You've seen it. The Asians have said they're not raising their prices. So who's paying those tariffs? The governments and the companies. They want to compete in the greatest store in the world.
But you well know that company after company, business after business have said that they're going to pass it off to the consumer.
So here's my question to the naysayers out there. If you really want American jobs and you want American companies to be successful, because you know the American people would rather buy American-made products, wouldn't you want the market to be conducive for an American company to have a fair shot here? I'm sure the answer would be yes. Well, then how do we do that? One way is through tariffs. I mean, come on, let's get real here. And I think most people, just on a logical level, they understand that tariffs should be used here. But it's President Trump is the problem, which is why they're not going to give him an inch. Now, here is Kevin Hassett also confirming the additional trade agreements that they have out there. Take a listen.
Should we be looking at that trade arrangement as something of a blueprint, a precedent of how he's dealing with other countries?
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely is a really exciting blueprint for what we're going to be doing. And Howard Lutnick has briefed me on about 24 deals that he and Jameson have been working on. And they all look a little bit like the UK deal, but each one is bespoke. Each one's a little bit different because different countries have different things that they've been doing wrong to us, different things they care a lot about. And so, for example, there was the UK auto issue where there ended up being a quota, and that was something they really cared a lot about. And by yielding on that, we got a whole lot for American farmers. We opened up the UK for the first time ever for beef farmers, which they really, really love. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little bit different, but the basic idea is everybody wants to have a deal and everybody wants to make a deal soon. And so you're right. You're going to see a lot more deals in the weeks to come, next few weeks.
And as soon as this week?
I would expect so, yeah. I mean, there are a whole bunch of things that are very, very close to the finish line. In the end, the president has to decide he likes the deal or not. There was a great story where I thought the deal was fantastic, and then the president's like, I can make the deal better, and he got an extra $1 billion in agreement of the UK buying our stuff on the phone by calling Starmer. So my guess is that the president's going to make the last phone call for each one because he is the best deal maker in the world, and he's going to add a little bit at the end, I would expect.
Again, it's just so fascinating seeing people squirm and criticize President Trump over this when they had nothing to say for the last president who didn't even lift a finger, right? Didn't even remove the tariffs that President Trump put in place in his first administration. So again, a lot of this is political theater and, quite frankly, a waste of energy from Democrats. And we really should be giving the Trump administration time to pull this off. And some people believe they're running out of time. I'm of the opinion that by next year, we need to see results. Okay, so let's actually get your opinion about what we talked about in this video in the comment section below, starting with what those three Democrats had to say as DHS threatened to, I guess, arrest them. Because one of the big claims here is that, I guess, one of the individuals body slammed an ICE officer, even though we have not seen that footage. That's number one. Number two, what is your response to the continued problems at Newark Liberty International Airport and how every day something bad's happening? I want to know what your thoughts are about that as well. Just put all your answers in the comment section below. Now, yesterday, President Trump had to step in and broker a ceasefire deal between India and Pakistan. Things have continued to escalate as nuclear weapons are a thing here. So if you missed out on that story and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.